We all need to be in it together.
And we have to move from what I think are fragmented approaches to much more, how can I put it, coordinated common actions.
Now, harmonizing our efforts is the best recipe for resilience across the whole value chain.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Great to start with some quotes from you as participants. That's a great way to get us started. Thank you for joining this meeting. My name is Peter McAllister. I'm the Executive Director of the Ethical Trading Initiative. Working with Fairware Foundation, ETI are trying to be a catalyst for a conversation which we believe is important to all of us and timely. As of 2018, the global clothing and textile industry was worth nearly $800 billion US. It reaches almost all countries in the world, whether China, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Dominican Republic, and many more as exporters, or of course the many consumer markets. Some are significant as both. It's an industry that links millions of farmers with millions of mostly women workers in factories through often complex supply chains to the global consumer. It covers everything from our basic needs, t-shirts, jeans, skirts, through sportswear to haute couture and the fashion runway. In any meeting covering fashion or the wider garment and textile industry, we should be celebrating not only the latest fashion and trend, the creativity of designers and the efficiency of supply chains that bring these products to us, but we should also be able to celebrate the impact of inward investment into emerging economies. Celebrate the employment creation, helping people escape poverty. Celebrate the promotion of women and the reduction in gender disparity. And writ large, celebrate the contribution of a global industry towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Yet in reality, while there are examples of good practice and many do strive for improvements, this remains an industry dogged by accusations of low wages, long hours, abuse of workers, including sexual harassment, dangerous conditions, lack of transparency, an entrenched imbalance of power, and a negative environmental impact, among other things. At best, therefore, this is an industry that significantly underachieves its potential to be a global force for good, an engine of economic development, a force for tackling climate change, and an industry which enables millions to achieve their ambitions. We at Fairware Foundation and ETI believe in the potential of this industry, but realize that we collectively need to work in a different way. To be honest about what needs to change, to harness the creativity and energy in the sector so that we can have the industry we want. One that we can be proud of, one that meets consumers' expectations, one with transparent supply chains built on fair business practices that deliver for business, for wider economies, but just as importantly, for the millions who work in the sector. This event today is to explore the potential for all of us to come together and define a common purpose, drive effective collaboration, and hold ourselves to account for progress. We hope you will join us in this endeavor. You might ask, however, why now? at a time when both production and consumption are being affected by a global pandemic, at a time when we've already seen some businesses go to the wall, at a time when the immediate future is not clear and there are many risks ahead. We acknowledge all this. However, the impact of COVID has shown up the frailties of the sector, not created them. And while there is an urgent need to focus on the day-to-day, this cannot be at the expense of seizing the moment to start the conversation about the longer-term changes needed and to ensure greater sustainability. And that any changes we make now are made with a longer-term vision in mind. When it is so clear how interconnected or related to the industry are, now is the time to harness the moment to help define a clear future for the industry we want. It just remains for me to introduce Pierre Hubert, who will be our moderator for today. We are fortunate to have Pierre with us today. He's an expert in facilitating multi-stakeholder dialogue in the apparel industry, food sector, mining, among others. He is the chair of the Dutch Agreement on Sustainable Garments and Textiles and the former chair of SLCP. So he has an in-depth knowledge of the sector, the opportunities and the challenges. I would also like to introduce our co-host in the studio, Catherine Shook. Catherine is a communications expert who has also worked in the garment industry for quite some time. She is an experienced public speaker and will host the interactive Mentimeter parts of this event. Welcome, Catherine. Last but certainly not least, from Rajasthan in India, I would like to introduce you to our illustrator, Ashish Yadav. For those who logged on in earlier, you may have seen her drawing already. She's a professional illustrator and will capture our discussions during the coming 90 minutes. Welcome, Ayushi. It's now my great pleasure to hand over to Pierre for the rest of this meeting, which I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Peter, for your kind introduction. Live here from the studio in Amsterdam, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this kick-off event of the industry we want. Before I will explain you briefly the program of this meeting, I would like to share some practical issues with you. First of all, as many of you already have done, please turn your camera on. You are all muted and the speakers, they can unmute themselves. There will be a lot of interaction already. Peter spoke about it because we will have a lot of very interesting speakers, but at the same time, during many moments in the whole program, we will ask your input and your thoughts. If you have any technical questions or technical difficulties, please chat with the help desk or send an email to info@theindustrywewant.com. Also, any matters related to the content and ideas and remarks you would like to make after or during this meeting, please use also the same email. And we are with more than 240 participants from all over the world. You can see this in this global map from the Americans, from Europe, and also from Asia. And we also, you all together, 240, you represent all the different parts of the supply chain. So we have brands, we have retailers, manufacturers, trade unions, NGOs, producers, etc. All of you are in this meeting. And let me start now with highlighting the essence of the program of today. As you have seen already in the extensive email that you got yesterday, we will look at the industry you want from different perspectives: government perspective, trade unions, international organizations, NGOs, brands, retailers. All of them will take a look and they will share with us their thoughts about the industry we want. And as you can see, we have a lot of speakers, very interesting speakers, and we have a lot of interaction. And as you probably saw in the email of yesterday, the program we have extended a little bit to 1:45. And I really recommend you to be with us until the end of the program, because at the end of the program, we will also explain you the way forward in this program, the industry we want. And we will also show you the final and total result of all the beautiful drawings and cartoons that are made from Rajasthan from our meeting. as I told you already, there's a lot to participate and a lot to opinion about, and Catherine will be in charge of that part.
Yeah.
Welcome, Catherine, please.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to be helping along the way to facilitate more of your voices. So we're going to be using the interactive voting tool Metrometer, if you're familiar with that tool. We will want you to stay with us until the end because we'll be having even some more interaction near the end. So I offer for you to make sure you have a secondary device, whether that's a computer, preferably a smartphone, and you'll see me throughout the program. Pierre, take it away.
Okay, thank you. We are very happy with the first speaker. That's the Dutch Minister of Trade and Development Cooperation, Sigrid Kaag. She has had a long career in international diplomacy, but since she has become a minister, she has been involved a lot in supply chain issues and has had always a very special attention to this garment sector. So good morning, Minister Kaag. Good morning that between all the political developments in this country, you are able to join us and give this opening statement to this conference, to this event, the industry we want. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hupperts, Director General Ryder, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's truly a pleasure to be here at this kickoff event for the industry we want and the industry we need to see in action. Of course, the slogan inevitably means different things to different people. But one thing it does for sure, it unites us in the realization that things need to change and we need to change the pace of change if we want to get there. It's the first step of a long journey, one that we will have to walk together. Because whether you work for a clothing brand, you represent a manufacturing company, government, trade unions, or a non-governmental organization, or like all of us, are a consumer, you want to stand to benefit from the transformative change in this era. And the pandemic has taught us this once and for all. In order to get there, we need to all take on our responsibilities, play our roles, and hold ourselves accountable. So I would like to really see this event to really arrive at and finalize an inclusive and cooperative process to improve industry standards, to ensure adherence to standards, compliance, and of course, to discuss in which ways we need to sanction those who willfully do not want to implement the standards we've arrived at. Because the challenges are very serious and the problems are structural. I believe many of you have been to one event too many where we discussed the same issues. We know the way forward, but it either is a lack of political will, financing, or collaborative platforms and efforts to realize the goals that we stand for. But all this talk means nothing if we cannot change the living and working conditions of the people working in the industry. Poor conditions, unsafe conditions, and against a very low and unfair wage, I would ask. Many value chains are linked together by unequal power relations and, of course, unsustainable business practices. And as the COVID-19 crisis has shown us, the structural and socioeconomic inequalities and inequities are only further reinforced in this crisis. We can do two things. We can ignore it, which none of us want to. We can take up the clarion call for action, raise the bar, raise the standard, but also heighten our level of investment and political investment. Now, surveys and data are always powerful tools. And I know from last May, 2020, we know from one survey that 64% of clothing factories received large-scale cancellations. So the sector itself is also suffering. 18% of them reported losses of orders entirely. And 1/3 of the factories had been asked for sizable discounts. The results are very clear. The workers pay the price. The ones at the start of the chain, people, human beings, our fellow human beings, are really bearing the brunt of the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic. The data are very clear. Factories closed in Cambodia, Bangladesh, workers have been laid off. And these, of course, are the people that have neither social rights and certainly do not have a social protection net or a network. So the most vulnerable people in the chain, in the supply chain, have shouldered the heaviest burdens. And the underlying problems of underdevelopment, of poverty, of marginalization are very clear. The pandemic can never be an excuse to impose stronger pressures on prices. We need to reset the clock and we need to determine the weakest chains, the weakest links in the supply chain, and to amend and to remedy. So we need a better industry. We need responsible business conduct. So we need to change and make this happen all together. The industry itself cannot just be competitive. It also needs to be compassionate. We need to look at well-being, welfare in creating wealth. So efficiency on the one hand, but equity and equitable distribution, redistribution are really the mainstay. We also need to seek an industry without child labor or bonded labor, an industry in which workers have safe and stable working conditions and the protected ability to negotiate with employers. It's a fundamental human right. An industry in which workers make a fair and living wage, companies operate responsibly with a view to humankind and the planet, and sustainability means something meaningful and is also represented in the social economic dividend that we seek to reap. That's the industry we should all want, and one I will continue to strive for. Last October, I presented a new policy on responsible business conduct for Dutch Parliament. The policy follows the OECD mix of guidelines, and it's a smart mix, I would like to think, of mutually reinforcing measures, voluntary and binding. It speaks from a duty to inform, to educate, to accompany, to train, to build capacity, but also to sanction. There is an obligation. It is not free of charge, but we work towards incentivization as a starting point. But to reach results, we need to think big, and the general due diligence obligation will be most effective from a Netherlands perspective at an EU level. And we really work and partner with Commissioner Reinders to ensure this and to achieve this. This way also the largest single internal market will help global reach and impact for people very significantly beyond their own borders. So I look forward to this event to guide us, to demonstrate good practice, to inspire us, and to build the partnerships that we need. And I hope your sessions will help us get there, because ultimately in this world, we have to think global, act locally, but underlying in all of this are partnerships. From the creative sector, the producing sector, the political environment, the NGOs, our advocates, and ultimately the consumers. It may be complicated, but it's very doable. And I firmly believe there's no excuse to not sort of put on our 7 miles boots and leapfrog, because the time is now. Thank you very much.
It's a passionate plea for change and highlighting some of the key elements that should be part of this new vision we will be talking about today. Thank you very much for this opening statement, and I hope you are able to listen to our second presenter, who's a female trade union leader from Indonesia, Elly Rosita Silaban. Thank you very much, Minister Kaag. Yes. If it all works, yes, it works, because I see her face. Good afternoon, Elly Rosita. Good afternoon. It's good to see you again. You're live from Indonesia, and we are very, very happy to have you in this event. I already said that you are in a unique position, because you are, I would say, the first female president of the Confederation of Trade Unions, having had also a long record in trade union activities within the garment industry. And we are very happy to have you as the first female president of this Indonesian Confederation with us. And if we talk about the industry we want, Elly, what for you is the key issue that we should highlight?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you also. I'll be here to see you through the screen. But as your question, industry you want, that's industry, sustainable industry that can assure decent work and social protection for all the workers, especially from multinational factory and its supply chain. Because when we see the global agreement in global level, it not directly introducing into the field. So we have difficulties when we try to socialize about that, because we understand that many agreement, many statement, joint statement, many very good things in global level, but not directly introduction into the field. So we have facing problem about this, because if we said about sustainable industry, that is mean they can respect also workers' rights, especially for those workers in vulnerable and also the women, because we talk right now about the garment workers. You know, garment workers in Indonesia, they almost 85% who work for garment textile are women, and then they also less protection about that. Especially, I bought this especially in the supply chain.
Because you said agreements are fine, visions are fine, but what we need is also, and the minister was referring to that too, we need local action and local improvement. We really need to see improvement in the workers' lives, etc., because that in the end is the key test for everything that we do. Is that what you are saying?
Yeah, because what happened in global level, but if there is no translation into the field, I mean,
in the local situation, yes.
Yeah, because what actually happened, you will see in field directly in the company, but we see that because many violation in the company, because when I try to explain about the instrument on global level into the field, they say we don't understand about this because there is no socialization about that. So we want the industry, we want that industry, sustainable industry that can assure this and work according to SDGs and also social protection to all the people and workers.
And Ellie, within this process, how do you see the role of the trade unions?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we see many challenges. Like I just explained it. I will explain you what happened in Indonesia because we're facing three big issues right now. That is about COVID and dismissal of the workers, and also the second one about there is no increasing wages for 2021, but we succeed about that because we have a dialogue social with the employer. And the third one is what is that? Omnibus bill. You know that because the new law right now, we against it in the court because diminish all the workers' rights like wages, severance pay, outsourcing, and contract. So we see that right now. We focus on that because what exactly we want that all the workers should be protected, should be protection by wages and also social protection. But we see on the what is we facing right now that all of that already diminished by the law, and also this is big challenge for trade union because I have to say you that 45 million workers, formal workers in Indonesia, but only 3 million join into the union. So what's wrong with trade union? Why we still keep our traditional strategy? Why we don't have to change it to just adapt or try to make another strategy?
I know that when we spoke in the beginning of this week, you said, for me as a trade union, it's also very important to be involved in social dialogue. Can you explain that?
Can you repeat again because I'm still.
Okay, you said.
Yes.
You said it's very important at a local level, at factory level, to really have a social dialogue between all the parties involved. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah,
because if we stay like just again the regulation or the law, so we will die. But we try to seeking another strategy. We push our member directly in the field how to make good communication with the employer so they can improve their social protection. They can increase the wages, even though the Ministry of Manpower degree said it, there is no increasing of the wages for 2021, but we push our member directly in the company to make a good communication, good social dialogue with employer, and then they decide about the wages, they increasing it. So we push it instead of against each other because we won't hear by them, but first we will also hear what they will say to us. So we have a bargain about that.
Okay, well, thank you, Ali, for highlighting and sharing with us your thoughts. I summarize a few elements: the importance of international agreements or vision documents or whatever it is into really concrete action on the ground. Secondly, you've explained us the issues that you are confronted with new laws, dismissal, COVID, etc. And at the end, you highlighted the need of really having a social dialogue with employer and workers to really find solution for the problems the workers in the factories and the women especially are confronted with. Thank you very much for sharing that view with us. And let's hear what our participants think about some of the issues that have come up in the last 25 minutes. And if I say, what are our participants thinking, then I always think of Catherine.
Oh,
so Catherine.
Oh, nice, thank you. Let's go to Mentimeter, shall we? So give me one moment. I am just about to share my screen here. I think you can see it now. So this is the moment when you, oh goodness, we already have some answers in here. People are getting excited. Thank you for that. So this is the moment that I'm going to ask for you to get your smartphone or your secondary device. I'm going to ask for you to go to the website, which is www.menti.com. You can see it at the top of the screen there. And there is a code that is going to be asked for you to put in. That number is 9016519. I'll give you a second. Fingers can't go that fast. And my first question to you, once you get to that slide, I'd like to know what action could be the most impactful for consumer country governments to help transform the industry. So I'm already seeing things such as regulation, trade union trade union, oh goodness, they're really coming in. Due diligence legislation, trade agreements with CSR, blimey, we've got a lot of answers here. And so I offer for you, just as you're also typing in answers, please also make sure to look at this word cloud so we can see all of the different things that we believe that what action will be most impactful. Oof. I'm going to move on to the next one. Thank you so much for your for already your words. I can see them going in quite fast. The next question I want to ask you is what action could be most impactful for the production country governments to help transform the industry? So this is in comparison to the previous question, which was about the consumer country governments. I'll give you a moment there to think about what we can see, but the first things we're seeing are minimum wage legislation, trade agreements, higher standards, regulation. Pierre, what do you think about all of this? What kind of patterns are you seeing here?
Very clearly, people highlight one of the key roles of governments, and that is legislation and also regulation. But what you also see is that people highlight the need for a really good dialogue between all the parties involved. So these are the two things that I see on the screen.
Absolutely.
And of course, there are a lot of other things that we will capture, but yeah.
So if you're unfamiliar with Mentimeter, typically the word that is the largest is the one that's being mentioned most frequently. We will make sure to be sharing these word clouds at the end with all of our other takeaways, just so you can see, because honey, I can't even read the small words. So thank you so much for this. I will see you perhaps in a few minutes. I'm going to pass it back off to you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We have heard a minister, we have heard a trade union, now we go to brands and manufacturers. And we have now a panel with three persons that I would like to introduce to you. First of all, you already see her on the screen, Rubana Haq. Good morning, Rubana. I suppose you are talking to us from Bangladesh, Dhaka.
Yes.
Good to see you. I will just introduce the two other persons so that we know who will be in this meeting of the next minutes. The second one is Anna-Karin Dahlberg. She is from a retailer brand called Lindex, operating from Scandinavia. There she is on the screen, I see it. Good to have you too. So she will bring in the brand perspective. And then the third one in this session is the first man in this program, if I exclude myself. It's Maximilian Lenk. He's Chief Product Officer of Mammoet. And if it all goes well, he should be on the screen now too. But at least start now with you, Dr. Rubana Haq. You have a very special position because you are president of the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporter Association. You are also an academic and you are also a poet. So you have very different qualities combined. And I'm sure from that perspective and that combination of qualities and also running a family business, you must be able to say what is the key thing that a new vision for this industry should contain.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the event. Well, for the last almost 2 years, I haven't been a poet and I haven't done my own business, so I have no idea. The only thing I know is what's happening in Bangladesh. And I can just very candidly share what's happening and what is it that we actually need to do. Yes. So I believe that multiple angles must seize. I think it's a time for all of us to be in it together. I think if there's one thing that COVID has taught us, COVID has of course taught us to be, to at least remediate how we think. It's not just about remediation of our factories and infrastructure, it's also about a reset button that we need to actually push in our minds. So there cannot be any separate labor angle, there cannot be any separate industry angle, there cannot be any separate brand angle. We all need to be in it together. And while COVID has unleashed ferocity in every sphere, start in the supply chain up to the brands, we have all realized that we are defenseless. So brands have their own challenges, the industry has its own challenges, trade unions have their own challenges, and everyone, each one of us are trying to defend our own positions. And when you defend, your defense actually does not yield any good result. We have to be collaborative and we have to understand each other's points. I do understand when there is constructive criticism, but at this point of time, we cannot afford to be pointing fingers at all. So when we woke up to fresh cancellations and force major contracts from the buyers, we got very nervous. And we started calling buyers up and pleading and begging that please don't do this. And we started accepting the deferred payments. We started accepting their, new contracts. And what was accepted earlier, what was not accepted earlier had to be accepted by us. For instance, payment contract change, deferred shipment, and then cancellation. Because when we went back to the buyers also said, look at us. I mean, everything's closed. So you can't be irresponsible as a supplier, and you can't also be asking this. So at any point of time, Bangladesh has a $34 billion export, but we have a receivable of $8 billion at any point of time, because our customers need to pay us, without which we also cannot pay our workers. So $423 million are paid to workers every month. It's not an easy sum for any government even, let alone a single industry. So what we actually woke up to was vulnerability of the payment for workers. We realized that there needs to be a safety net for the workers, because in case of any emergency, that's something that we would have to handle. That's one. So that's the world that we want. So one, we need to make sure that our workers' wages never face such extent of vulnerability. That's one. Number two, I was looking at what countries need to do, manufacturing countries. Yes, countries need to do minimum wage, which we have done, living wage, excuse me, but we also have to understand whether the supply from, whether the demand from the Western brands are there also, without which we won't be able to even function. So at this point of time, raising standards, if we talk about it, then everybody has to raise their standards. And everybody has to come to, an equation whereby all of us will think along the same lines. Okay. So it is not a question of just suppliers, manufacturing countries complying. It's a question of the brands complying. It's a question of the of even the trade unions, the labor activists understanding that there is a harsh reality out here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Anna Karin, you are in this business already for many years, of course. Dr. Urbano already spoke about different perspectives. If you look at this issue and the need of change, and Urbano already highlighted, we are all in this together, we all have to change. It's a reset button minds. What is your view on that?
I'm super happy to hear Urbano say just that, because that was my words. So I'd like to echo what you're saying, Urbano. I mean, I think we all agree that what we want to see is a fashion industry that is, you know, resilient, empowering, regenerative, and that is really sustainable. And I think that we have the capacity and the knowledge and the guiding principles and the tools to create that. We have talked about this forever and ever. And I think, you know, despite all the problems and challenges that we have in this industry, I think one thing that we can be proud of is that we have come quite a long way when it comes to collaboration. However, I think that one component, I mean, we have very limited amount of time here today, so we could talk about this forever. But if I'm just going to select one thing that I think would be quite fundamental in moving forward, is that, you know, we have a lot of collaborative initiatives in this industry, but very often it's created, you know, by brands for brands, and then we implement it in our supply chain. I think it's really about time that we, as you said, Urbano, very rightly, start, you know, getting on board and creating a common sustainability agenda with the supply chain, where suppliers and manufacturers are also play a bigger role in the creation of these collaborative initiatives and what we actually need to do with their voices as well. And, you know, that we start evening out the power balance with, you know, real partnerships and based on mutual transparency as well. So we have this common sustainability vision of where we want to be, brands and suppliers. Here, I think that we still have some work to do.
Okay. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. For all the speakers that we will have in this program until 12:30, an hour and a half, they all need 1 hour at least. And because there are always issues that are very, very relevant to discuss in depth. But that's exactly the process that will start after this kick-off meeting. So apologize for trying to keep the time, because we already extended this meeting for 15 minutes. And I don't want to extend it more. Maximilian Link, you are from Mammut, this is global outdoor and sportswear brand. You have been trying to build this partnership with your manufacturers. Give us some key elements of your success.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon to the Asian countries. Pierre, thank you very much for that introduction. Yes, I would like to share some ideas which we are having as Mammut, as our guiding principles for that topic. And I would like to start with a guiding principle for us as a brand, which is we are a purpose-driven company. Our purpose is to create a world moved by mountains. That's a written statement. That is a purpose which is an inherent part of our brand DNA. And this purpose for us is saying that we see ourselves in the intersection between mountains and people, and we want to bring both more closely together. This is the reason why we are existing as a brand. And for sure, as you can think, corporate responsibility is a mandatory, a natural part of that purpose. And based on that, we are having a corporate responsibility strategy in place since years, and we are working towards those goals. And the two main pillars. Share us 2 of your secrets.
Share us 2 of your secrets.
I would like to share 3 guiding principles, if I may. The first one is, and you all touched on that, it is cooperation and collaboration. That's so important. We can only win that topic together. And in cooperation and collaboration, it's about working with NGOs, very important for us. So we are, for example, partnering up with Fairwear Foundation since 2008, and we are partnering up with Blue Sign since 2011. And to partner up with NGOs, it's so important because it's
Okay.
creating and applying best practices. But also as an industry, we are working together in working groups based on specific topics. Second guiding principle I want to share, and it's very, very, very important for us. It is about long-term partnerships with the manufacturers, because as Mammut, we are standing for quality and safety. We can only live up to that standard if we have strong manufacturers, because good quality can only be produced if the manufacturer is strong, and also if he's working with his workforce, with his employees in a very good manner. And to do that, what we can do is offering long-term partnerships. And concretely, that means with 50% of our manufacturers, we are working together since more than 10 years. And with 95%, we are working together since more than 5 years. And I think that is very, very important factor for win-win situation in that topic. And last but not least, third guiding principle is you have to make that an integral part of your company agenda. And at Mammut, we are speaking about corporate responsibility in every management meeting. And we have, for example, with Fairer Foundation, regular audits of our manufacturers. And based on those audits, we have annual assessments with Fairer Foundation to see and to check where are we today and how can we improve in the future. So those are 3 guiding principles which I found very relevant to be very concrete.
Okay, well, thanks to all of you for for sharing these remarks with us. We've heard a warning in the sense that collaboration is really needed. You can't impose things on parties in the supply chain. So I think for the process forward, it's very, very important that brands, retailers, manufacturers, and other relevant organizations really participate in this process. And I'm sure the organizers of this event have noticed this. Thank you very much, Dr. Urbana. Thank you very much, Anna-Karin. And thank you very much, Maximilian Lenk. And now we go again to...
Mentimeter.
Mentimeter,
Who
yes.
doesn't? How about we do this again? So I am just going to share my screen here. And I want to ask another question. Now we're almost to an hour of you all sitting. So maybe if you are interested in standing or moving your legs a little bit during answering this next question, keep that blood flowing. Yeah, we need it to go to your brain to answer this question. So I ask of you, what needs to change in order to create mutually beneficial supplier brand relationships? What has to change? Transparency, buyer codes, even more transparent. Goodness, I'm already seeing 4 times transparency, 8 times transparency. So I can see purchasing practices, trust. I am trying to get this guy to scroll here, fabulous. A common vision, a different mindset, purchasing practices. Again, purchasing practices. Pierre, do you agree?
Yes,
Are
the
you
key issues
yeah?
are there, yes, yes.
Yeah, the answers are there.
Yes.
Lovely, okay.
Yeah, please let them just
Oh yeah,
keep on answering these, giving us more input.
absolutely.
The more we get, the better it is for the follow-up process. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm gonna stop my share here. Again, we're going to be sharing all of these answers at the end when we share all of our supplementary materials. So I offer now for you to sit back down. You've moved your legs, thank you. And I might ask for you to do that again later. So I'm gonna pass it back off to you, Pierre.
Yes, you already saw some input about issues that you have shared with us before the meeting. And let's take a look now again at an animation. Okay, a lot of issues you've seen in the last minute already have been mentioned by the speakers in this event. They also came back in our Mentimeter. Now we go to a video from the Secretary General of the OECD. We all know the OECD because of its guidelines. And Angel Gurria, the Secretary General, will share some thoughts with us on this event.
Ministers, colleagues, dear friends, it is a pleasure to be with you at this important event. Your presence today is a testament to our shared mission to develop sustainable solutions for ensuring responsible business conduct in the garment and footwear sector. Now, responsible businesses are resilient businesses. And given the experience with the pandemic over the past year and looking ahead, our efforts to create supply chains that are both responsible and resilient are of utmost importance. The common denominator of those efforts is due diligence, based on the OECD due diligence guidance for responsible supply chains in the garment and footwear industry, in the garment and footwear sector. Due diligence is preventative, risk-based, informed by stakeholders, and involves ongoing communication. Now, harmonizing our efforts is the best recipe for resilience across the whole value chain. Let me highlight our priorities. First of all, we need to anchor ourselves in widely accepted benchmarks. The alignment of policies, regulations, and practice with OECD due diligence guidance will be important to drive better cooperation, reduce costs, and facilitate consensus on the numerous technical aspects of due diligence. With a common understanding anchored in OECD RBC standards, we can then turn to matters of information exchange. Timely and meaningful data sharing across the value chain is key. Not only in terms of crisis, when situation is as complex as it is today, but we need to harness the digital efforts, the digital tools. We need to break down information silos. We need to address key questions about the ownership and the value of data generated by all the different actors in the game. Second, there's a question of the dialogue between buyers, suppliers, and worker organizations. This is pivotal to protect workers by holding parties to account for their actions, from poor purchasing practices, non-payment of wages, or redundancies. So let's work together to demand and facilitate these dialogue structures in all segments. Now, third, sectorial collaboration is essential for companies to increase the leverage and increase the scale. Our industry and multi-stakeholders initiatives play an important role to support and guide companies through this process. However, these organizations must be accountable to their members and their rights holders and demonstrate their impact. So governments are a key actor in this agenda by driving initiatives to greater alignment, to improve trust, and to gain greater efficiencies from cross-recognition and harmonized reporting requirements. To this end, the OECD developed its alignment assessment methodology, carrying out assessments of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, the German Partnership for Sustainable Textiles, and the Dutch Agreement on Sustainable Garments and Textiles, with an assessment of Fair Wear Foundation underway and more coming in the pipeline. We're encouraged by the leadership of these initiatives to work with us to recognize the importance of self-reflection and the importance of self-improvement. Now, dear friends, this crisis should be seen as a turning point when companies learned that their business models were in fact putting their very essence, their very existence at risk. For responsible and resilient supply chains, the collective shift to more sustainable business models and supply chain management that protect workers and their livelihood needs, that has to be done now. And it has to be done in synergy with all the stakeholders. So please count on the OECD in this important endeavor, in this important mission. Thank you.
Well, Angel Gurria, especially for your last remark that you really are willing to support this endeavor. Very happy with that. And for the participants, please note we have edited a little bit this video. The full video will be available after the meeting for all participants. So then you get the full version, which is about 2 minutes longer. Let's go to our next conversation with two people from international organizations, trade unions, and the ILO. I would like to welcome to this meeting, and I already see her sitting over there, Sharon. Sharon, welcome. Sharon Burrow is Secretary General of the International Trade Union Confederation, and the ITUC is a very, very big trade union confederation operating in 163 countries with almost 200 million members. And I know Sharon has been very active already for social justice, women's rights, but also climate issues and labor law reform. And the other speaker is Guy Ryder from the ILO, the Secretary General, the Director General of the ILO, also with a very long track record in fighting for decent work in this world that we live in. Both of you welcome. We agreed that both of you will reflect a little bit more general about the issues behind the garment sector, and you will also focus on the future of work and the need for a transition. And we said that Guy, you would start with some introductory remarks, and then I hand over to Sharon. Please, Guy, can I start with you?
Sure, and thanks very much for the invitation. Thanks very much. Look, what I think is already very striking about the conversation that we've heard is how much unanimity there is about the industry that we want, the question that we're all here to think about. I think everybody wants to see an industry which has decent work opportunities for the greatest number of people. We want to see an industry which contributes to development processes in the different countries involved. We want to see, I think, an industry which distributes its added value fairly amongst the different actors. And we want to see an industry which is sustainable in all of the dimensions: economic, social, environmental. So what strikes me is we all are trying to get to the same place. And then the question that arises is, why is it proving so difficult and far too slow, frankly, to get there? And that's what I think we ought to look at. And I think there's a couple of things to say about that. Firstly, there is no doubting the complexities. There are a multiple group of actors involved here. Of course, buyers and manufacturers, we've heard about that dynamic. Trade unions, civil society, governments, international organizations. And let's be honest, it's great to say we're all in this together and we share the same objectives, but we all come to this story with our own interests, with that defensive sort of stance which Ravana referred to. And we have to get over that, and we have to move from what I think are fragmented approaches to much more, how can I put it, coordinated common actions. It's great to say we're all in this together, but if we don't act on the understanding that failure to create sustainability in the industry is absolutely necessary for it to continue, we'll all lose. We'll all lose. So we have to go from fragmented defensive responses to, I would say, more general, sector-wide and coherent ways of doing things. And it can be done. And I really appreciate the way Minister Kaag set this debate with a certain degree of impatience, because big actors in this industry is public opinion and consumers. They have the final sanction. And I think there are many signals out there that they will use that sanction if collectively we fail to act better.
Okay, thank you very much for highlighting this need for a coordinated common action, because that is the word that I also hear very clearly from you. We have to act together. Some impatience is I think, shared by many participants in this meeting, and I'm sure Sharon will have the same impatience. But Sharon, asking you, where is for you the key challenge of the transition?
So I hear a lot of goodwill in the audience, and I appreciate transparency and, all of the issues that have been raised around decent work and sustainability. But, on that last section, nothing about regulation, nothing about a floor of rights for workers or environmental standards that will actually sustain the interests. This is in all of our interests. Corporate social responsibility, I'm sorry to say, I know I'm a troublesome friend and we invested in it too, but it's dead. It hasn't worked. This is an industry that's been based, not the only one, but an industry that's been based on exploitation, on a low wage outlook, on wages, sometimes minimum wages, that workers can't live on. And yet the industry generates millions of dollars every day. It can generate more millions of dollars with just a little added to the value of the product. Consumers are ready. Workers are beyond ready to have decent work. So what's the problem? I know there's tensions between the brands who want to continue a very traditional model and the manufacturers. Frankly, on this one, I'm on the manufacturer's side. If they don't get proper pricing, then it's very hard for us to actually say you have to pay a minimum living wage. And also, what of the governments? There is no universal social protection here. And in many of the countries, they've listened to the corporate voice. And there's not ILO standards approach to labour legislation or grievance procedures or remedy. So what do we want? We want mandated due diligence at all levels. And the EU is coming to the party. I thank the Dutch minister like Guy did, because they started with their compacts, but now I know they're supporting the EU for mandated due diligence. This is not about rendering criminals, although it might. for those who don't want to operate the next economic model as we recover on the basis of a floor of rights and social protection. It's about us working together on a legislative base to say, how do you assess risk? Our index shows you, the ILO shows you, where the countries don't have adequate labour rights, where they don't have adequate enforcement. But in fact, we can help assess the risk, but then do more than that. Every company at every level has to have grievance procedures. Rubana and I have been talking about in her country, you know, if we can't make a fast, efficient labour court system, let's have alternate dispute resolution mechanisms. Yeah. The solutions are there, but we need regulation and transparency, and mandated due diligence has to be at the core, with indeed a supply chain convention. Guy will shudder at this because he knows the politics of that, but if we do not have a supply chain convention at the ILO, you don't have the full picture. And can I say, Angle's not here, but we also need, in the review of the guidelines, a convention on the guidelines, no longer just voluntary, a convention so that governments are prepared to say with business, and there are businesses out there who are on this track, that in fact we want a very different industry and a very different future where we build prosperity together and we share it.
Okay, thank you. Guy, one last question to you. Do we need a kind of a new social contract between all these parties involved?
We talk a lot about a new social contract. What I think we need to do, I find there's a bit of a standoff involved in this debate. There are some people who think this is about voluntary action by business and by others, involving NGOs, dialogue. And there are others, and you've heard Sharon just articulate it, saying, you know, the time for that's past. It didn't work. We've tried it. It's now time for regulation, legislation, etc. There's a bit of a standoff. The ILO suffers from that standoff because we have some big fights around that standoff. And the second standoff is between what needs to be done nationally. You know, I hear many international actors saying, well, if something's going wrong in a country, be it Bangladesh or Cambodia or wherever, that's a job of the government of that country to fix. And if you go to that country, they say, yeah, but if the buyers and the retailers and the market doesn't give us a fair price and necessary resources, don't look at us. Yeah. And we've got to break through these obstacles. If we don't do that, I think you might be inviting us to the same conversation next New Year, and we would rather not be in the same place.
I'm glad you said at the end these two standoffs, because I do recognize that in all the debates about what should be national, what should be international, what should be voluntary and what should be regulation. The minister also referred to that in the smart mix that she presented to the parliament last year. I would like to thank both of you for sharing a very, very interesting insight and also highlighting some of the key issues that have to be part of the process ahead. Thank you very much, both of you, and thank you, Guy, thank you, Sharon, and good luck with your endeavors, and thanks for joining us. Thank you very much. And then, as you know, it is Catherine time.
It's Mentimeter time. So let me share this screen here. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling quite moved by the last two speakers, and so I'd like to know. So they mentioned quite a few changes. Which ones have resonated with you? Which ones do you find that you might be holding on to as you leave this meeting? I wish I had my own phone in order to contribute. The mandated due diligence, as well as the social contract, I'm seeing the word mandatory, as well as this sense of impatience. We got to get going. We have to start taking some actions. The social protection, the alignment, again, the big word on the screen is mandated due diligence. Less defensive, the mandatory regulations. Yeah, goodness, we're seeing a lot of the word mandatory. Maybe that's an adjective to take away from today. Impatience. Are you feeling the same things that are, how many do we have today? 250 folks? Are you feeling the same thing?
Yes, very good.
Yeah. All right. Again, we're going to be sharing all of this because it's gotten to the point that I can no longer read the words. So, Pierre, I'm going to pass it off back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Catherine, we go to another video by Ineke Selderust. She's the coordinator international of Clean Cloth campaign. She has been involved many years, and her organization too, in campaigns and activities around our industry, the garment industry. And she will share with us looking back and looking forward on what is needed in the sector.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you all over video today. I'll try and make 3 points about the industry we want in the time that I've been allotted. Firstly, I think it's important to look back as well as forward, and to remember that Ethical Trading Initiative, Fair Wear Foundation, and many others put the right to earn a living wage in their standard for member companies nearly 25 years ago. Since then, production globally has more than doubled. Consumers buy more clothes every year, but workers still live in the same state of poverty. It's important to analyze why we failed, and I count the Clean Clothes campaign in that as we've been part of many projects and campaigns and initiatives on this topic in the same time frame. It's an entire generation of women who were unable to send their children to school, to live healthy lives, or pay taxes to make their society more sustainable. If we are to achieve the common goal that we all have for the industry we want, which I think can be captured to say socially, economically, and ecologically just, then we stand to learn as much from our failures as from our limited successes to date. Looking back will also enable us to envisage a radically different business model within an achievable time frame, our time frame still. The industry has changed so dramatically over the past 25 years, driven by globalization, fast fashion, and digitalization, that there is no reason why it can't change as dramatically again, but now driven by the need for sustainability, resilience, and social and economic justice. This is an industry that actually knows how to run a workplace safely and with respect for labor rights. It has done so in the past. It knows how to produce and consume without negatively impacting the natural environment and the climate. It is doing so at a small scale. The current business model, though, is preventing it from applying that knowledge to the scale that it needs. If there is one upside to COVID-19, it is that a significant transition is now a given. The question is just, how do we make it just? It's also clear, though, 8 months in, that the costs of the COVID crisis are being offset downwards into the supply chain, with those who can the least afford it the most negatively impacted. A recent survey found 80% of the garment workers with children are now skipping meals to feed their kids. This brings me to my second point. Long-term overall change can't come at the expense of addressing those short-term needs. Workers need relief as well as reform, or to use the UNGP terminology, remedy, as well as prevention and mitigation. I think it's important, as outlined in the brief for the project, that the UNGP gets used as the only global standard of expected conduct for all business enterprises wherever they operate. And to bear in mind that the UNGP emphasizes that remedy goes hand in hand with prevention and mitigation. And also emphasizes that the obligations of companies exists independent of the state's ability or willingness to fulfill their own human rights obligations, and over and above compliance with national laws and regulations. I repeat this because in our experience, a lot of these initiatives bringing together a broad group of stakeholders are spending a lot of time either finger pointing around the supply chain or waiting for others to move first or for all to move at the same time. The UNGP actually put an end to that notion. We can act and we have to act now, each according to our own obligations. The industry we want can start tomorrow, with brands publicly committing to ensure workers will be paid their wages in full and their severance in case they lose their jobs, by paying a small price premiums on orders going forward into a global fund. Our estimate now is that less than 10 cents a t-shirt will provide the economic relief garment workers need to survive the crisis and strengthen unemployment protection in the future. Brands can negotiate a legally binding global agreement along the lines of the Bangladesh Accord to deal with this global pandemic crisis, just like they dealt with the safety crisis in Bangladesh after Rana Plaza. Such an agreement can include a worker complaint and investigation mechanism to deliver remedy for the most urgent cases of violation of safety, union busting, and sexual harassment, all of which are on the rise given COVID. The 10 cents a t-shirt will go a long way to do this. That short-term need can be fulfilled in parallel to developing a long-term, time-bound action plan for a just transition. I think that just transition, as we all know, will require transforming purchasing practices, rebalancing power relationships both between buyers and suppliers and between suppliers and workers, and importantly, an increase in legislation and regulation, holding companies legally accountable for social and environmental abuses, but also bringing negative market consequences in addition to incentives. Thank you very much. Looking forward to collaborating on reaching such an agreement.
Thank you, Ineke Zelderus, for summarizing in 5 minutes a lot of issues that are very important in the process ahead. You spoke about social and economic and ecological justice. You mentioned the business model that already other speakers referred to, and you spoke about the need to have a just transition. And if we talk about just transition, we always need also the finance sector. And we are very happy to have with us Arie Koreneef. He's one of the directors of the Dutch ASN Bank, and they are one of the founders of the platform Living Wage Financials. And that platform has a lot of assets, 3.2 trillion it is managing. And what they are doing is it's a coalition with that tries to stimulate collective action on environmental issues. And I'm joking. You want to promote the living wage in the supply chains, and that's why you have founded that platform. So please, Arie, explain us what it is all about and why it is important to do that. And I know that you also are working in the garment industry.
Good afternoon, dear participants. Thank you for inviting the financial sector also to this important debate. And it is a great pleasure to contribute. I'd like to tell you a bit more about our role, how investors perceive the situation, and what brands can do to take their performance to the next level. I speak on behalf of the platform Living Wage Financials. What was said is a coalition that was co-founded by ASN Bank in 2016 and is a strategic partner of the Fair Wear Foundation. And the coalition comprises 15 investors representing 2.6 trillion, to be accurate, euros assets under management. The financial sector has an obligation to conduct human rights due diligence. Through our platform, we play our part in engaging with garment companies on a living wage as a salient human rights risk. And in 2019, we expanded our focus to the food, agri, and retail sectors, as low wages are not just a risk in a garment-producing countries. We believe workers should earn a decent wage so they can send their children to school and escape a vicious cycle of a poverty trap. And we therefore founded the platform and introduced meaningful engagement. And this means we conduct our own research into the status of a living wage in the supply chain of over 30 garment brands. We publish the results each year during a living wage event where the results are discussed. And we give meaning to the social component, the S in ESG. And it is often regarded as a deep dive on the part of the financial sector, a focus that will have more chance to contribute to a better life of workers. And as we all know, many industries have been severely affected by the pandemic, which has impacted your brands and supply chains. But workers in low-cost manufacturing countries have been hit hardest, given the lack of robust social protection systems in these markets. If there was ever a time to work towards a living wage, it is really now. And how can brands contribute? Well, let me say first that in general, we see overall progress in embedding the relevance of a living wage in the garment industry. And many brands are motivated to take the next steps. And what we ask the companies is to be transparent about the wage gap in supply chains. A minimum wage is too low to live on. Have a strategy to close the wage gap. Work with peers in the industry and thus create leverage in factories. And finally, apply responsible purchasing practices and calculate a price that enables factories to pay workers better wages. And if brands under our engagement do not meet the requirements we set between now and 2030, we have escalation methods and can decide to divest. For now, we will continue working with the Fair Wear Foundation, the ministry, and of course the friends of our platform, as we all have a very important role to play. And we are keen to involve more financials and inspire them to use their investment power for systematic, sustainable change. And I call upon everyone, whether you work in a government, the garment industry, or the financial sector, to join this movement and take action now. There is really no time to lose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very kind introduction, Arie, and we are very glad that the financial sector has taken up these issues in the garment industry. Thank you very much. Let's go for the third round of input that we received from you before this conference, before this event. And let's take a look at the industry I want and your input. Yes, this was the third round of input that we received from you before this event. Yeah. A lot of speakers already, and in a lot of discussions around the garment industry, often social issues are mentioned. But there's also a very important environmental challenge. And let's hear your opinion about that, Catherine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's go to Mentimeter again. So this one here, you're going to see a bit of a spectrum. So my question to you is, in the garment industry, how closely linked are social and environmental challenges? Now, on one end, you might see a 0, and on the other end of the spectrum, there might be around 100 if you want to offer a numerical value. So would you find that it's not linked at all? Would you say it's very closely linked? How are you finding the social and environmental challenges? So I can see a hover around 8, so certainly over the halfway point. And we can see, if you look behind a bit more of that graph there, we can see certainly the largest chunk is between the 7.6 all the way near to the other end. So very closely linked. Oof. Pierre, I'm going to pass it back off to you. Thank you, everyone, for your numbers.
Thank you. Okay, let's deep dive a little bit into this environmental issue before we go after this next introduction by Andrew Martin. We will go to the process that we will follow in the coming 6 months. So please stay with us and hear more details about what will happen after this event. But before that, I would like to give the floor to Andrew Martin. He is a Vice President Membership and Stakeholder Engagement at the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. He also plays a very prominent role in the fashion conveners, and he will tell us more about the fashion conveners and the way that coalition tries to promote action on environmental issues and the SDGs in general. Please, Andrew, the floor is yours for the coming minutes.
Pierre, thank you very much. I was asked to give a brief presentation with some insights and perspective really with the work that the SAC has been doing in relation to collaboration and partnership around addressing environmental challenges facing our industry, particularly some solutions we're working on to try and scale this impact. The SAC's core vision is around focusing on working with our industry to transform business for exponential impact and to give more than we take. And for us, it's absolutely critical that this is done in collaboration with others because we know we cannot achieve it without. I want to take you through 3 areas of work that we're engaged with from an environmental perspective to give you some insights and learning from the collaboration and initiative perspective. The first is 2 initiatives, the UNFCCC Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action. For those that don't know, the Charter is a UN initiative bringing together well over 100 retailers, brands and manufacturers, working in this industry with over 30 supporting organizations, with a very clear goal of driving the industry to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The Fashion Pact is a CEO-led initiative of fashion and textile companies working on 3 common environmental goals: stopping global warming, restoring biodiversity, and protecting the oceans. Now, from my own personal engagement and experience, I want to highlight 2 key really positive points that I think are beginning to see a help in accelerating the vital work that we're doing. Firstly, increasingly there is clear alignment on the vision and objective. In fact, in the case of the Fashion Pact's global warming goal, rather than diverge and take a different route, it fully endorses the Fashion Charter and its target, and is working closely on its approach to using science-based targets as a means to achieve this. Secondly, and this is really important, both initiatives are not only calling out the need to build on existing work, but they are explicitly guiding participants to engage with existing initiatives. For example, naming the Textile Exchange Preferred Fibers and Materials work, or the Carbon Disclosure Project Supply Chain Programme, and the SAC's Higg Index tools. Next slide. From this, I want to move on to some work that is happening with a coalition of non-profits under the banner of the Fashion Conveners. Now, this is a group of like-minded organizations who have committed to accelerate collective action through working both individually and together. Now, while in the early stages, what began as an informal engagement over a year ago with discussions has now been was formalized in the summer of 2020, with the group now focusing on shared objectives, openly sharing knowledge and insights to raise awareness into each other's work, but specifically looking for opportunities to reduce duplication and complexity for value chain players. And also starting then to work together in groups to support and develop shared initiatives across the relevant players. I would keep your eyes and ears open for more actions which will flow from the collaboration of the Fashion Conveners. But for now, I'd like to share with you the beginning of some work that is happening with a specific group of the Fashion Conveners. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hello. The SAC, Textile Exchange, Apparel Impact Institute and ZDHC are now beginning to work in alliance to drive forward some more detailed, focused work on specific areas. Formal letters of intent with several potential agreements were signed last September, with the goal of accelerating impact and effectiveness of the organization's sustainability programs, respecting each other's core competencies, highlighting areas of complementarity, and focusing on reducing duplication wherever possible. Currently, we're at the next stage of development, but a couple of key notes of highlight are, we are specifically looking at how to connect existing frameworks better, such as the Higg Facility Environmental Module, ZDHC Roadmap to Zero program, or the Higg Brand and Retail Module with the Textile Exchange Corporate Fiber and Materials Benchmark. And we're specifically looking at partnering and collaborating and sharing resources for global implementation through on-the-ground funding and impact management. Now, through these different initiatives and activities I've been involved with in the environmental sustainability space, while I see there are still many challenges, I'm encouraged by a lot of the work that's going on, particularly the level of openness and willingness to collaborate. And with that, I'd like to close with sharing some of the key learnings and observations and the challenges which I think still exist. From the learning perspective, I think the key principles I can see, which could be questions really to raise in trying to drive such collaborations forward, are really: 1, Do we and can we align on a core vision? 2, are we willing and will we be truly willing to open share knowledge with each other? 3, and I think this is critical, is what exists. Really look at what exists, what's working well, and let's collaborate to build on it. Which leads me to, where are we exploring complementarity with each other's work? Which ultimately gives us the question we should constantly be asking in this context of, let's make sure we're avoiding duplication. Now, equally, along with these key learnings and principles, there are still many challenges. I think a few of these I'd like to highlight. 1, how can we collaborate together at a size that is workable without becoming clumsy, bureaucratic, but is also more inclusive than it is now, and in a way that will drive impact at scale that is meaningful locally? How will such initiatives and activities be financed and resourced? I think this is a question that's come up again and again in some of the conversations today. And to the crux of today's industry we want conversation, how can we ensure that the work in the environmental space is truly connected fully to the social and labour issues we need to address, especially in the light of COVID and the fragility of the sector that has been highlighted? This is now more important than ever. I pick up one key area and one key point that's come up again and again today already, and that is around transparency. And I think from the holistic perspective of social and environmental, this is critical, connecting these together, environmental aspects and social aspects with data, information in ways that are credible, meaningful, reliable, but also actionable. This is actually a journey which we at the SEC are progressing on, but it's something we know we will definitely need a lot more engagement and collaboration and partners to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew, for sharing these especially key learnings and challenges at the end, and giving us some insight into what fashion conveners will be doing. And of course, these key learnings and challenges, and a lot of observations that already have been made by the speakers, but also by you participants in all the Mentimeter questions, are part of the process that will follow after this event. And as you know, this event was organized by ETI and Fair Wear Foundation. And I would like to give the floor to the Executive Director of Fair Wear Foundation, Alexander Koonstam, who will share with you what will happening after this meeting. So Alexander, I think you're sitting also in Amsterdam, but in a different building. According to our strict COVID regulations, only Catherine and me are live in the studio. So please share with the participants the process that they can expect from today onwards.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pierre, and a big thank you for hosting this event today. And let me thank the speakers and all others who have contributed to this kickoff meeting. Your esteemed contributions confirm the momentum for a new page in the garment sector sustainability, and also that we need to turn it together. This extraordinary time, I think, has made clear that the world needs new purpose, new narratives, new normals in many aspects of our global society and economy. In the words of the European Investment Bank, 2021 is the year to change the world. Let's change tomorrow, starting today. And part of this change is an irreversible move towards a truly people and planet positive garment and footwear sector. Today's speakers confirm the momentum for that. Investors want to see it, governments, retailers, media, consumers, workers, of course, as do brands and factories. And it is now up to us collectively to make that lasting change, to move from scattered initiative to catalytic collaboration. So let's join forces as a sector and lead the way in contributing to the SDGs, in implementing the UNGP and ILO standards through the OECD sectoral guidelines that were highlighted today, and within positive, enabling legal and social economic environments. So what should we do? I think the minister said it in her opening. We need political will, also on a business level, especially on a business level maybe. And we need collaboration. We must continue taking our own responsibility, each and every one of us, businesses, governments, unions, MSIs. Yes, it's true what OECD Secretary General Gurria said. Responsible businesses are resilient, successful businesses. Sustainability is not just a matter of reducing workers or environmental risks. It also helps manage corporate risks, and it promotes long-term economic success. But when individual brands or factories invest in a sustainable future, they need to know that a critical mass of others are moving in the same direction, and that governments, investors, and other stakeholders support that direction, base their laws and regulations on what is ambitious and what works for people actually working in the sector. So we need a common purpose that allows firms to collaborate and to align, and a common language with shared methods and tools, harmonized approaches that we can collectively work with and rely on, and that can serve to show others how the sector as a whole progresses, because progress we must. What then can you expect from this process that we kicked off together today? Well, first of all, its success will depend on your participation. ETI and Fairware as facilitators, because that's what we are, and certainly not more, will review today's input and speak with key stakeholders in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, we will follow up with all participants, so I ask you kindly to share with us any additional thoughts you may have, important stakeholders you find missing, or significant initiatives we should be aware of, like the MSI Working Group on Purchasing Practices, which has deep dived into a practical translation of the OECD due diligence guidelines and found striking consensus across organizations. So we count on you to help develop a common narrative, to connect in active collaboration and alignment, and to participate in credible collective accountability. We will propose a more detailed process by February and invite you to sign up. And as you can see in this timeline, we envisage a short push through working groups on all of these elements, and the presentation of the first draft vision and action plan when we get together again on June 22nd. Assuming there's enough energy to work on this together, we can then take what we have and start working with it from the summer, combining efforts, making clear where we stand and where we're going. As MSIs, we are committed to working together with each other and with you all to create this movement for the industry as a force for good. The industry that we can feel proud to be a part of. In other words, the industry we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander, and also thank you for showing a little bit the way forward and the process in the coming 5-6 months. 22nd of June is noted as a very important day where we not only get draft visions of the vision, but also of the action plan. And before we finish this meeting, we will now end with all the speakers, but now we will deep dive into your thoughts about the process that we can follow in the next 4 to 6 months. And Catherine will take you through some of the questions of Mentimeter so that we gather the maximum of input from your side to be able to do the best job in the coming months. So I'm handing over again to you, Catherine.
Thank you, lovely. So you're going to be spending a few minutes with me. So let's see Mentimeter one last time. So I'm going off to share my screen again. One thing I want to offer during these questions, please make sure, let's give a little wiggle in your chair if you can. So as you're answering this question, maybe kind of move around your body a bit. You've been sitting for a while. I can see my fellas here in the studio are doing the same. But as you're doing it, answer me this question. What is your role? Please indicate the role of your organization in the supply chain. And you can see there, you've got a few options. So I hope you've given a bit of a wiggle. Let's move your body a bit. You've been sitting a while. We really appreciate your time as well as your continued interaction with us. So I can see that we've got around, and the numbers are growing, around 38% of branded retailers. We've got around that same number with NGO and the sector initiatives. We have absolutely suppliers, trade unions, business associations, and some other folks that represent 9%. The reason why we're asking this is because this is going to play a bit of a role in some future questions that you're going to be hanging out with me for a few minutes. So how about I move on? So my question to you is this: what are the 3 things you want to see in the vision for the industry we want? And I offer you to think a bit about what are those pressing issues? What are the levers of change? What are those 3 things that you want to see in this vision that we are going to be taking on for the next year for the industry that we want? Responsible unions is the one that's taken first on the screen. Some governmental action, concrete actions, the pilot project on living wages, collaboration, and I think we might be seeing that word a bit more frequently. CEO engagement, shared commitment, advice on financing. Freedom Association has taken a big text there, as well as transparency and commitment. Again, we're going to be sharing these word clouds because we're getting to the point where I can't read it anymore. But please continue to offer where you think these 3 things are. I'm going to move on to the next question. Transparency has taken the win on this one. What do you find is needed in the coming months to make a common vision a reality? Now, absolutely, I mean, we saw freedom of association, we saw transparency. How are we going to get there? Is it going to be with common language? Is it going to be with collaboration? I ask for you to think about the how. What is needed in the coming months to make a common vision a reality? So understanding the reality, spot on. Action over the conversation, government action, pressure. Government action's taken a bit of a bigger word there. Commitment, practical dialogue, and just action simply. Hi, I see one there that says, don't reinvent the wheel. So thank you so much for offering the hows. We're definitely going to look into these a bit more because I can't see it anymore. I'm going to go on to the next question. Thank you again for your participation. How would your organization, do you think, benefit from a common vision and approach? How do you see the perceived benefits of coming together with this common vision and approach? Yeah, I think the organization might benefit from pressure, the more money for workers and having a better world. I can see the legitimacy, not inventing the wheel again, and pressure. Pressure again has taken a bit of that bigger word here. Pierre, I'm going to ask you a bit. How do you think organizations can benefit from a common vision and approach?
Well, here it says in the center, I can still read it because I'm close to the screen. It's about level playing field. In the end, if we are all committed to the same, and if we are willing to be accountable also on that, I think, there is a common way forward, because already many speakers highlighted not only commitments, but also how are you transparent about it, and how you are accountable about it. And so that's a very important and necessary link.
Yeah, the level playing field. Thank you. Another question I'm going to ask you. So remember, we had asked you kind of which cohort that you fit into. So for this one, please know that this is not a sign-up sheet when you answer. We just kind of like to get a bit of a feeling. So would you prefer co-driving a process? Let's say coordinating a working group come the future. Or would you prefer instead being actively involved in discussions? Or perhaps maybe even consult as part of a sounding board? Where do you think you, as your role in your organization, or just these roles in the garment industry, where are they going to go? What do they prefer to do as we move forward for the industry we want? So I can see brand and retailers are taking a larger percentage in the being actively involved in discussions, as well as the NGO sector, also the co-driving the process, being actively involved in discussions. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
No, I think it's very good. It's very encouraging to see that a lot of participants in this meeting are willing to give an active contribution. And I'm also looking to the participation figures. We started with 275, and now we are still with 215, I see. So there's a very high level of participation that makes me very optimistic about the process after this meeting.
Yeah, lovely. And we are absolutely taking these answers. We are going to be using them as a bit of a blueprint, perhaps, in moving forward. Thank you again for your participation. And the last thing I want to ask you, is there anything else you want to share? Did you find that there were perhaps things missing? You want to offer any compliments? Perhaps anything that you would like to share after we, because I think we are just a few minutes away from finishing this event today. Or maybe we just really covered it all and there's nothing more to share. More country voices. Oh, hey, thanks, guys. Thank you for the compliments to us. And I hear you on working together and involvement more of the suppliers and continuing this discussion. I'm happy that folks were happy with the event, and we're happy that we got to hear your voices, especially during this crazy time to be alive. So I am going to close off my Mentimeter desk over here. And Pierre, the last time I'll say it, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. And it's the last time I received this invitation from your side. Yes, it was a kind of a pressure cooker. In 1 hour and 42 minutes, I see on the clock that is close to my desk. We have been able to go through many subjects from many different perspectives, and the enormous richness of input was received, and is very good input for the process to go ahead. The only thing I can do at the end of this meeting is thanking everybody. First of all, thanking the two organizations that have organized it, and I do that through the directors, Peters and Alexander. Next to that, of course, the daily work. There was a lot about talking. You have an idea, and then there's on the ground something also should happen. And in this case, I would like to thank Lisa, Annemiek, Femke, Amelia, Karin for all the work that they have done in the last 6 to 8 weeks to make this possible. I would like to thank the technicians and the staff here in the studio. Of course, I thank Catherine Mentimeter for her great contribution to the interaction. And let me thank, in the end of my long list, let me thank first of all the speakers. We have had 11, I think, very encouraging and very inspirational speakers about this issue. I would like to thank you, because if I look at the screen, we still have almost 200 people present. So you really have been participating and giving us a lot of input for the road ahead. And let me think. Yes, and of course, and you've seen it. It's really beautiful. I never saw it.
Yeah.
We have to thank Ayusha. You've seen her in between a lot of dashes again. But Ayusha, can I get? Are you able to talk with me? Because I think you've done a great job from Rajasthan, following this whole process in the last 1 hour and 45 minutes, and drawing beautiful and cartoons. And can I get in touch with you, Ayusha? Do you hear me, Ayushi? I see somebody now. Can I hear
I'm
you?
sorry, the other device.
No, it doesn't matter. Hey,
I can hear you. I can hear you all this while.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
How was it? How was it being with us for this almost 2 hours and drawing this whole process?
It was so wonderful. I mean, I learned a lot of things, and then it was a lot of fun. There are a lot of people who are getting together to work on this sustainable and the whole to change the whole industry scene. It was fantastic, and thank you so much for having me here and having to illustrate this whole meeting.
Thank you.
So
Ayusha,
yeah, that was wonderful.
Ayusha, you've shown us a lot of individual drawings. Is there something more to see? Is there is there a collection of all the drawings in one big drawing, or?
Yes, I just zoomed out at the end, and I can show it once again.
Please,
I'll just zoom out.
Yes.
So yeah. This is the one big panel.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, unfortunately,
That's here.
Unfortunately,
And then
Ayusha,
Q&A.
yeah, now I see it. Yeah.
The
This is the whole drawing.
chat.
Yes.
We had
Oh, you've
you
made
know,
a very
a
nice
lot of
picture
suggestions
Catherine
and
of
then
me. Yes.
just a whole big picture. And then it
Great,
just,
and I'm sure we will share this with the participants because it's a beautiful drawing.
Yes.
And well, thank you again, Ayusha, for because culture in this in general, but
Thank
also
you.
in this time is
That's you
extremely
both, but
important. Thank you very much, Ayushi. And well, this is the end of this meeting, dear participants. Thanks to all of you, and I'm sure the organizers are looking forward to get in touch with you after this meeting and continue this endeavor and this challenge that everybody has who loves this sector. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
And good evening or good afternoon.